Hello, and thank you for coming to my channel, Magic Meets Masculinity. My name is Richard. So normally what I do is I create a script to follow along with when I make these videos. For this one, I'm just going to kind of free flow it because I feel like it's a more organic, what's the best way to put it? It's a more organic flow. And I actually prefer that versus read from a script because it feels like an actual conversation that I'm having with somebody. So this video, what I'm going to be talking about is astrology. Now, what I think is that men have been severely handicapped by not taking astrology seriously, or at least looking into it in kind of maybe even a passive way, right? I know that it's mostly marketed towards women, reading their horoscopes or, things like, oh my God, I'm such a Sagittarius. I did this. My name is Tiffany, blah, 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 blah. And I get that. And I can understand why, men might kind of feel some kind of way about it. I don't agree with that. It is kind of fun when you kind of want to go and look at personality traits and all that. But even before, it wasn't originally something that was just marketed towards women. I want to say it was in the early 20th century that it didn't switch over. It switched over to, kind of to entertain housewives that weren't working yet. But before then, scientists, doctors, businessmen, all sorts of people, all sorts of other men would follow astrology, and it would make, an impact on how they would make their decisions, especially businessmen. So where I want to start off with it is the first thing that you're going to need to do is get your date of birth, your time of birth, and the place that you were born at. I suggest going to astroseek.com, putting in that information, and you will be able to pull up your entire chart. So you're going to have your sun, your moon, your rising, your Mercury, your Venus, your Mars, your Jupiter, your Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. You're going to have, and then there'll be some accompanying like asteroids and stuff like that. But that's something that you don't get into until way, way down the line. Then you'll have the signs. You have like Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Gemini, Cancer, Aquarius, Aries. You'll have those. Then you'll have what's called your houses. Now, this is kind of what throws people off at first. So the houses are the places in your life where the energies from the signs and the planets are going to be put to work and where you have to look at. So, for example, my Saturn is in Capricorn in the 7th house, right? Saturn is a planet that's all about karma and restriction. So Saturn is going to teach you these lessons whether you like it or not. My house is the 7th house of business and relationships. So for the while, I've had trouble finding a career that I wanted, and I've also had terrible luck with relationships. And there's lessons that I'm needing to learn before I become successful at those things in later in life. And different houses represent different things. So 7th is relationships and business relations and stuff like that. While you have other houses that are the house of health and home. You have houses that deal with your ego. You have houses that deal with enemies and secrets. So each one of the planets in those signs is going to give you the themes that are going to play out in those houses. So I would highly suggest when you look up your natal chart, first look to see where your Saturn placement is, because that's going to be one of the hardest ones. And if you're younger than 28, I would highly suggest looking to what's called your Saturn return. And that's going to be Saturn is going to return to the exact spot that it was the day that you were born. And when that day happens and that Saturn returns to that point for you, things tend to get a little rough because it's going to force you to learn whatever lessons you need to learn in that house. So another examples of other placements. So each planet has a sign that it does well in, it does okay well in, it does okay in, that it does sort of bad in, and it does really bad in. So, for example, I'll use my chart again. I have Mercury in the sign of Virgo. Mercury is the planet of communication. When Mercury is in Virgo, which is a planet that is ruled by it, it is considered exalted, which is in the best placement that it can be. So the attributes in those planets and in that house are something that I'll have to work less on, right? So think of things as like when you're born and you're looking at all your placements as the base stats of when you start a video game. You know, sometimes you are better at something physical than you are emotional, or, you know, things like that. And an example of a planet, and that's a detriment that's in a sign, would be my moon is in Scorpio. So moon rules emotions, right? Scorpio is a planet that is traditionally ruled by Mars, which is like war, anger, things of that nature, justice. And so when the moon that's in a sign that dominates your emotion is in the, or the planet that dominates your emotion is in a sign that is about, you know, those type of things, it's going to be in severe detriment. So it's taken me a very long time to learn how to control my emotions, because there is a ton of them. So that's just another example of that. You know, and every person is going to be different for the most part, at least for the closer planets to the sun. So you're going to have your Mercury, your Sun, your Mars, your Jupiter, your Venus, and of course your Mars. And basically that's going to be your personal planets that have the personal attributes. So the planets after it's Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, those are going to be generation planets because they're so slow moving around the sun that it's going to fill whole houses, full signs for people. So you'll have a generation that's going to be born in Capricorn, like mine, for Saturn, or, you know, Pluto and Scorpio and stuff like that. So yeah, so you would pay attention to those kind of things as well, because they're going to be things that you still will have to work on and will play out in your houses. But yes, that should be the first thing you do. And the next thing I want to address is that astrology is, the way I look at it, are universal rules that everybody has to follow. And even corporations follow these things to their benefit. For example, I will use Disney. Disney released Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, that's what it was. In the Multiverse of Madness, on the day that Venus went into Aries. Now, Venus is the planet of love. Aries is represented by Mars. Aries, the god of war. I'm sure you can draw the conclusions. The whole entire movie is about a woman, basically a witch, going crazy and trying to do everything and hurting a bunch of people trying to get her kids back. Another example is the television Loki. Loki is a representative of the planet Mercury, right? So the planet Mercury will go into retrograde. And that's when the planet will go backwards in the sky. And that, because it's the planet of communication, commerce, and things of that nature, it's going to cause everything to get disrupted in those themes. Which is why what I've seen every time Mercury goes retrogrades, there's mass flight cancellations that make the news. And that's been basically the case for the last few years. I remember, I want to say back in 2021, there was a Mercury retrograde where Bank of America, all their systems went down. And I knew that because I worked for them at the time. Then Facebook had massive issues, including their own people getting locked out of the building from security, technological issues. Planes got grounded, mass flight cancellations. This is all happening right in Mercury retrograde. My car got impounded, you know, so for leaving it at a friend's apartment in the wrong parking spot. They follow these rules. Businesses follow these rules. Politicians follow these rules, even if they're doing it at a subconscious level, which personally, I think when it happens enough times, it stops being a coincidence and it becomes on purpose. That's my opinion. You can draw your own conclusions. And the next thing I want to go into is the mythology of it and how you see these things in our own culture, and most people don't realize what they're looking at. Grand Central Station. Obviously, people coming in and out of there for business. They are traveling everywhere. There's all sorts of things that happens there as a hub. And this is in New York for those who don't know. The first thing, you walk into Grand Central Station and you look directly up. The artwork on the ceiling is all astrological signs. I think it goes up to Cancer. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've been there. And another thing that you would see is when you go outside, you see a giant statue of Hermes, which is a planet that's also, or which is a mythological feature also associated with the planet of communication, Mercury. Now think about it this way. Hermes was the communicator of the gods. He would fly around and he would tell Zeus what he needed to know. And he would fly around and tell everybody whatever it was. And there's a humongous statue on a place that controls commerce, communication, and transportation. And it's not like this statue's not old. It's been there forever. And you see this time and time again play out through all these different, parts of the world, or even here in the US. And once you start looking into these things, you're going to start picking up on it. And like I said, a lot of people, they do it because it's fun. You look at your personality, you kind of have fun with it. You kind of have a little bit of idea of other people. That's the majority of it. But once you start digging really deep into it, you start understanding like how much of our society is based in astrology. How can men use this? Well, think of it this way. You know that there's a snowstorm coming. You know to put on a jacket. You know that Mercury retrograde is coming. You know exactly what's going to happen, what the energies are going to be out. You do things that you can prepare the best. You can expect what's going on. Now, will things go as you prepare it? Probably not. But at least you have an idea of what's going to happen as far as the energy goes. And you can sit, instead of automatically reacting towards it, you can take a step back and figure out how to navigate these situations appropriately. Venus retrograde was just a big one that we went through. That one would affect people's love life because all of a sudden the themes of Venus, which is the planet of love, are reversed. And so people are going to have to be introspective about these things and figure things out. A lot of relationships ended. I knew a bunch of different relationships that ended in this case. And then there's also my own introspection of relationships of the past, trying to figure out what I want out of a partner. And I knew that this is the energy that was going to be there, so it gave that extra kick while I'm doing this reflection and taking the time instead of trying to figure out why is all this happening. Like, I know why it's happening, so I'm going to take a step back, I'm going to think, and do the best I can in the given situation. Same thing goes with Mercury retrograde, Saturn retrograde, Jupiter retrograde. All the planets will go through retrograde, and their themes are going to get reversed. So that definitely will help men. And looking at their own charts will help men in the ways that they need to understand the things that they are going to need to grow from, and what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. Me being mostly a chart ruled by Mercury, I excel when it comes to generally in communication. YouTube, I'm not as good as it yet because I'm practicing and figuring out what is best for me doing this. Like I said, I'm doing this in a free style flow. Nothing's written down. It's just what's coming to my head and what I talk about. But certain things are in the detriment in my house that I need to work on, like I did with the Scorpio moon. And the same is going to be for everybody across the board. And the difference is now that you're aware of it, you can work on it. So, and that's what's going to be extremely powerful helping men go forward. If you're practicing magic, you can understand that whatever forces are working, you can try to use those forces and where those placements are at, because they change every day, to work your spells. So if you want money, you want to do something with Jupiter. In my opinion, if you want to do something that's not that good, you use Pluto, because generally that represents death. I highly suggest not doing those, just because it just doesn't do any good for anybody in the long run. If you want somebody to communicate with you again and try to open up lines of communication, do something when Mercury's in a good placement and those energies are working for you. Things like that. And once you understand astrology, or at least have a basic understanding of how astrology works, then your magical workings are going to be that much more effective. Because if you look across the board, almost every single magical practice has its baseline in astrology, whether it be ceremonial, the witchcraft stuff, which usually a lot of it is based on the different phases of the moon, brujeria, things like that. It usually is based on some sort of the planets. Ceremonial magic is very big on it, and they use a wide variety of different placements. And as I was saying, the placements will change every single day. And a good person to keep up with this is a YouTuber named Cam White. He does a weekly astrology report to let everybody know what is going on for that week and what themes are going to happen in this week and how you could possibly navigate it. Like I will watch it and understand, okay, Thursday there's going to be this placement doing this thing, and maybe money might not be so good around this time, things like that. So by understanding that as a man, you know that, hey, maybe I shouldn't spend so much money around this time and kind of take a step back and do this. Or maybe this thing is in a positive placement where I can go forward and do this thing and it's going to work out well. So doing this will be definitely a big benefit to men. Because then you start to understand why all the different spiritual systems are structured. Even the Bible itself has themes of astrology, as much as evangelicals like to act that it doesn't. Because they just don't know. They don't know about astrology. They don't know about the things that are lurking right under the surface. Virgo represents the Virgin. Who's the Virgin? The Virgin Mary. That's just an example. So there's so much more that I can cover, and I can go for hours and hours and hours on this. But ultimately, I can't do that. It would just take too much time. I will do certain things in individual segments that will help other people try to understand and break it down. Mind and Magic has a very good breakdown on each one of the planets. So I suggest checking him out again. So, and what I would said before is that these YouTubers generally have like an overview of everybody. Cam White has touched on about it helping men before as well. But what my goal is I want to take these things and put it in a perspective where men can use them in a positive way to help their lives. So, yeah, and then also too, one thing, it's a great opener for when you're talking to women. And especially when you're genuine about it. Your genuine interest, like you're not doing it just to try to pick it up. Like when you actually have a genuine interest in astrology and you do talk to women who are into it and you're able to tell them more than they know, they love it. They absolutely love it. And it's real. It's genuine. It's a genuine connection. It's not fake. I have been successful in this. And it should be something that you should employ too. because it's nice to have something that you have common ground with. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up with a tarot card. The next one I was going to do is the High Priestess, which represents the moon, which is emotions, which the card itself represents, of course, emotions, intuition, secrets, and things of that nature. Well, I thank you all for coming to this channel and listening to the free flow as I try to figure out the best way to do this. And I'm looking forward to putting out more content. Thank you very much.